Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to YouTube Live. And today with me is a special guest, Dark Vader. No, it's actually Mohammad Arshad. Assalamu
Alhamdulillah. How you doing, bro?
Bro, we can't say where your beard ends. It's just like flowing.
That's why I wear black. That's why I wear black. I'm going to go live for I'm going live for Muslim Mastery later on, right? And I do this thing called the beard showing ceremony. So the way it works is I basically turn my head and I show you how long my beard is, so that I can tell you that although I have a long beard, I can't give you fatwa and I can't give you Islamic rulings. So that's why.
Oh, you can't?
No, I can't. Not really.
Like any of the fiqh questions today, we're not gonna like cover it.
No, I can only help you with your mind, bro.
Oh. Anyway, so let me do a quick introduction of Mohammad Arshad. So Mohammad Arshad and myself, we go back years, 2010. It's been a decade. Longer than both our marriages. Basically, when I joined IERA, Mohammad Arshad was heading Mission Dawah. And all the early days of IERA, we had, all of the fun stuff, all of the negative media attacks on us, and the big debates and all this stuff going on. And then over time, we basically realized that, Arshad realized that we have to develop our du'at. So he set up a development program, public speaking program, because that was obviously his background, but he also worked in Al-Maghrib and worked for Muslim Youth Helpline and all these other sort of organizations. So he's a big believer in personal development. Just before we get into what is personal development and the story of the scholar who supposedly said to him that Muslims don't need it, I just want to explain to you guys why today is important. Because as you guys know, every day we go live, we cover a different aspect of the dawah. So you may be thinking, what on earth does personal development or mind power or Mr. Dark Vader over here, how is he going to help us with dawah? Well, I just want to tell you guys a little story, which is that if I look back into my own life as a da'i, if I didn't take personal development seriously, which before I joined IERA I'd never heard of really, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish much of the things that I'm doing today. Now, I'm not saying that means I'm a great person or anything. I'm just simply saying my productivity would have been a lot lower. And it helped me not only in my dawah life, but also my professional life and also my personal life. So these things have huge impact. Now, when you look at people like Mohammad Arshad, you just may be thinking, well, he's not a public speaker, he's not a big da'i, he's not this, he's not that. We have to remember that I learned from him, Hamza Sotsi's learned from him, Muhammad Hijab learned from him, Abdul Rahim Green learned from him. So it's not, don't look at that, because that's just, an internal radio that sometimes goes off in people's heads. So Arshad, Muhammad Arshad, why don't you get started off with, why is personal development important and what on earth is it?
Okay, good question. So I think that first of all, I'm going to say something harsh. This is just my opinion. I think if someone is watching this and thinking about personal development and thinking, why is that important? I think they've kind of failed to understand Islam. Okay, because for me, when I look at it, I think about the people that were before us. I think about the Sahaba, and I think about people like, I remember one day I was walking home from school. I must have been like, I think 9 years old. In those days, a 9-year-old could walk home from school alone, right? So I was walking home alone. My mom didn't pick me up. And on the way, one of my cousins came to me and she said, "Oh, congratulations. You've just had a brother." And I'm like, wow, that's amazing, right? And so anyway, this brother who grew up now, mashallah, my parents named him after a person who was about to kill the Prophet ﷺ. How does that make sense? How does it make sense that Muslim parents would name their child after someone who's going to kill the Prophet ﷺ? It was, of course, because that person, his story didn't end there, right? And that person, of course, is Umar radiallahu anh, who was an enemy to Islam, okay? So the way I look at personal development is that it can take someone like Umar radiallahu anh, who was wanting to kill the Prophet ﷺ, was against Islam, and become one of the greatest human beings to ever live. A lot of people, they know about this book, The 100 Most Influential People, right? And that book is amazing. The number one person in there that everyone knows is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what they don't know, there's only one other Muslim in that whole book, and that is Umar radiallahu anh. Okay, so now when you take this and you realize that you had one guy who was thinking about Islam and the Prophet ﷺ like this, And then because of Islam, he became like that. For me, that is what Islam is all about. It's about developing you from being the worst of what you are to becoming the best of what you are, right? And for me, that is exactly what personal development is. That's why I think Islam and personal development are basically the same things. So yeah, that's a bit of an intro.
That's a beautiful story. And I like the way that you put it, that if you don't understand personal development, you don't understand Islam, because as Muslims, we continuously are trying to spiritually progress. And that would include goals that we have spiritually. And to reach those goals, we need certain strategies. One thing which I just wanted to sort of highlight is when we think about why is it that we've failed in life, and why is it that certain people, even non-Muslims, have certain goals which they achieve, we forget that there's certain personal development techniques that they've been applying throughout their life, which manages to make one person productive enough to achieve maybe what a million people could not have done. And here, what comes to mind is Steve Jobs, right? So we may not think of personal development when we think of Steve Jobs, but he used to ask himself the question every single day that if I was to die today, am I taking the actions which are going to fulfill my vision? Essentially, that's personal development. That's understanding what am I supposed to be doing with my life, and which direction am I actually going in? So this personal development stuff, the way you've explained it beautifully, I totally agree with you. Now let's get down to Muslim mastery. What on earth is it, and why did you set it up?
Okay, so Muslim mastery is basically there to empower Muslims. We believe our vision is for every Muslim to be a muhsin, right? So as we know from the hadith of Jibreel alayhi salam, that there's different levels. There's the Muslim, there's the mu'min, the muhsin. And the muhsin is the highest level. This is the one where there's ihsan. So ultimately, Muslim mastery is all about trying to transform ourselves to be people of ihsan in everything that we do. And the way personal development works is obviously, they kind of work about it from a destiny perspective. So you imagine someone whose destiny is here, what's going to happen with them is that, their destiny is there because of the habits they had, and their habits are there because of the actions they had, and their actions are there because of the thoughts that they had. So a lot of this stuff, it starts with the mind, and then it moves into the tongue and the actions. That's how they describe Iman as well. And so what we want to do at Muslim Mastery is really focus on the mindset, focus on the heart, focus at the starting point for all of this stuff, which will eventually lead you to a different destiny.
Absolutely. And when I was thinking about Muslim Mastery, I remember I just went onto your Facebook just to sort of connect it. And when I looked at the logo and looked at certain things, then I remembered back in maybe 2011, you were sharing the logo with us, and you said gold and black, it being the Kaaba. And I was just thinking, that was a concept. It's just a concept. And today it's like 100,000 followers, videos with millions of people benefiting. And I personally just get little tidbits here and there, but it does actually impact you. And about everything, if you look at in the room around you, the bulb, the fan, this laptop, eventually it was a concept which then was actualized. So the question is, what's the missing link between a concept and it being actualized? And the answer that you're giving us is basically personal development. How do you understand? How do I get from where I want to be, where I am right now, to where I actually want to be? Now, just so it's clear to the viewers right from the outset, Muslim Mastery is not free, but it has lots of free content. However, I would actually say this. If anything, is completely undercharged, and the reason for this is that, firstly, nobody values anything if they get it for free. This is a golden rule of life. Number two, if you, for example, you put in effort for something, right, and you pay for that thing, you're much more likely to actually utilize it. So, for example, I signed up to Visionaire of Sheikh Mohammad Sharif, and I had to apply it because I paid for it. So right off the bat, the reason why I'm mentioning this to the viewers is because there's this thing, so far, most of the things have been free, right? But if you really want to develop yourself, to have somebody like Mohammad Arshad, who entirely spends his time developing content, delivering content, refining content, continuously improving the lives of people, then it's not going to be something that's going to be free. And I'm just going to make that clear from the outset. Even though you never asked me to, but
Yeah, no, with Muslim Mastery, we've been very lucky, alhamdulillah. We have an amazing volunteer, Uzma, who you know very well. She's been the backbone of Muslim Mastery, and what's happened is that 99% of our stuff is completely free. It's been completely available for years and years and years. We've just been doing content all over. We have a specific program called The Best Version of You, which is more about personal development. And it goes into more specific topics and stuff. So I think that's really good for people to do. It's an animated course as well, whiteboard animation. But generally, Subboor, I think that, when I think about all these kind of people that I've worked with, like yourself and Salahuddin and all these guys, it makes me laugh, first of all, right? Yesterday, I was making wudu and I was thinking about this interview. Whenever I think about you, I just laugh, bro, because you're a strange character, as everyone knows, right? You've evolved into this strange character, right? But when I think about all you guys, I'm just really, really happy because I feel that, a lot of people, they think about their life in achievements. Okay. So I was sitting with one of my friends. He lives in the Burj Al Khalifa, and he basically has done very, very well. He's done software. He's made a lot of money and stuff, mashallah. And I was sitting there with this guy, and he was telling me, young guy, only 18, 19. And he was saying to me that, I want to achieve this, and I want to achieve this, and I want to achieve this. And he was talking in all these kind of things. And I really believe him. A lot of time people just talk. They talk a lot of rubbish, right? But this guy actually believes, an action man, he does it. And I drilled it down to this, and I said, look, it's great that you want to be this, and you want to achieve this, you want to do, but ultimately, who do you want to become? Because right now, what needs to happen is that you have a mental picture of things that you want in your life, right? You have a mental picture of maybe a job or a car or a house or a family or children or whatever it is. Whatever your mental picture is, the truth is you in your current capacity cannot handle that. You cannot fathom it. You cannot reach it, right? So you have to transform to become someone else to be able to achieve that. And for me, that's the crux of the personal development thing, that if you want to achieve Jannah, you have to become someone different to who you start out as, right? And it's the same with all the goals and all the dreams and all the hopes you have. You as a person have to be different to achieve that. Like right now, for example, me, I was terrified of public speaking, okay? But then I have taught Muslim celebrities like how to do public speaking better. Now, that's insane. If you think about it, that is insane that a guy like me who was terrified of public speaking is teaching others how to do public speaking, right? So at that time, I could not have imagined it. And at that time, I would not have been able to do it. And so it's the same for you, for the things that you want in your life right now. Like you have to transform and become someone different to be able to achieve those things, inshallah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's making me laugh when you talk about public speaking and you being shy initially, and then you were forced to basically Al-Maghrib step up and actually do it. But I just wanted the viewers to know, because most of the people here, they are, they deal with atheism, they deal with Darwinism and stuff like this. So I just want to let you guys know something I haven't said publicly before. One of the tactics which Mohammad Arshad taught me, which was state change, that's the very tactic I used just before I went into my first formal debate with Aaron Ra, which was actually the most popular debate to this day. And that little thing we are going to cover a bit later on. But I just want to show you guys that this isn't superfluous knowledge. This isn't like, this abstract stuff. Like, wallahi, I've applied this and it's worked. And it's worked again and again and again. And that's just one thing amongst a whole range of tools, conceptual tools, which Mohammad Arshad has at his disposal. So just before I carry on, I just want to ask you one simple question. You always go back to this story of a scholar who said to you, Muslims don't need personal development, right? Now, why did that hit a nerve with you? And why do you think that sort of thinking is prevalent amongst the vast majority of Muslims?
Yeah, so I think it's, like I said, I feel that personal development, just the word itself, it has like this connotation that we see it as far from us. We see it as potentially a non-Muslim thing. We don't understand personal development in and of itself. And I think that a lot of people, they don't actually understand what Islam's about. Because remember, a lot of us, alhamdulillah, we're blessed to grow up with Islam. So what is Islam? Islam is basically that I'm not allowed to eat the sweets that my friend eats as a kid. Right? I mean, what is Islam? Islam is like, I'm not allowed to watch kissing on TV, or I'm not allowed to have a girlfriend like George does, right? Islam is just these restrictions, right?
Yeah.
So like if I see Islam the whole way like that, and then someone says personal development, it feels like it's so disconnected. But like the way I just told you about it, like now it just makes sense that it just clicks so much. So I think maybe we just need to use better language. You know, there's an organization we all know about, right? That we kind of checked out. They're very powerful in the way that they use language, the words that they choose, you know, the kind of realm of possibility and all this kind of stuff that they do. And I think that potentially it's about us really changing our language about what personal development is. But ultimately, it's about you being the best version of yourself. It's about you transforming to someone else. Something else. IO training program, they go through this click moment, which I think a lot of people here should go through as well, which is this is what happens. They spend a whole week with Hamza, Subboor, Imran, Salahuddin, and they go through all this amazing training and stuff, right? And then towards the end, they like introduce me to come and do training for them. And so these guys are like, first of all, who's this guy? I never heard of him, right? And then on top of that, this, like we got Abdurrahim, we got Hamza, we got all these guys. This is the guy that's going to teach us about about speaking. What is going on here, right? And I think that there's a point in that course when the whole thing just switches, right? And then they realize why someone like me may be better at actually helping them with that element of dawah and communication than anyone else in the world, right? And I think that this is what we need to really understand, that even our perception of what speaking is and communication is, I think even that is a little bit all over the place, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And just wanted to tell you guys something funny about that. This whole thing about, you know, how do you become a public speaker and why do we need someone like this Darth Vader to teach us? You know, we could just watch something online. So a few years ago, me and Arshad, we were doing training, public speaker training, like we used to. And so I used to stand up in the IR office and I used to give a speech. And then normally after you give a speech, you always get, mashallah, brother. Mashallah, that was fantastic. Brother, mashallah, yeah? So Mohammad Arshad looked at me and said, fake. You're fake. Be yourself. And do you know what? I'll be honest. There's certain things about public speaking that when someone looks at public speaking and they go, yeah, but I don't have charisma, but I can't speak like that, and I don't know the terms that Hamza knows. And certain simple things like what Muhammad was teaching me is, be yourself. Stop being fake. Stop acting like, I don't know, William Lane Craig, or stop acting like this guy. Just be yourself. And then you start to actually realize, wow, that's profound, but I never actually thought about that. And the reason you haven't thought about that is because you haven't actually studied it. You've just seen a few videos. And there has to be, I mean, you know, that 10,000 hour rule. I'm not sure what it's called. You know,
10,000 hour rule.
Yeah, okay, it's called 10. Whoever came up with it, yeah? Like, the stuff that Muhammad's coming up with, he's not just coming up with because he saw a YouTube video and he got a bit excited and started to try it out. It's based on a sort of analysis, like, oh my God, like we've got all these things, this works, this doesn't work, let's try this. Hence why when you do have new people coming up and they are actually public speakers, you realize they're very fake on camera, and we have this sort of fakeness radar. We can tell, guys are being a bit fake, yeah? But when a person is being authentic, they don't have to be charismatic. They don't, because they're not charismatic when they're talking to their missus. They just have to be themselves. So these small things have a huge, huge impact.
Yeah, I think one thing I was thinking about the other day, right? Check this out. I was trying to think about how people are. Like, one of the things we always do in the whole public speaking training is that we talk about how, like, sometimes I have a one-to-one conversation with the person in private and they're absolutely fine. And then I put them in front of 300 people and they're like, I cannot do this. Okay, but it's the same kind of, they're using the same mouth and the same tongue and the same everything, right? How is it possible that you cannot do this even though physically you can do it? And I thought of something the other day, right? It's quite weird. I was laying on my bed and I was laying on the edge of my bed, like literally the edge, right? So you imagine you're laying on your bed, you're on the edge of your bed, and I'm looking at the floor and I'm very comfortable. Okay, like I'm just comfortable laying on my bed on the floor. Like I can see the floor, I'm comfortable, I'm on the edge. You'd be comfortable, right, Subboor? If you're in your bed like that, you'd be comfortable.
Yeah.
Then I looked down at the floor and I thought to myself, imagine if this floor wasn't right here, but it was like, 1,000 meters down. Okay? How would I feel about laying on that same bed? Like, if I roll over, okay, like I'm going 1,000 meters down onto the ground. How would I then feel about that bed?
You'd be petrified.
You're petrified, right? You're suddenly like you're nervous. Like even though I'm so stable, I'm happy, I'm okay on the bed. Just that thing has made me petrified, right? And this is what it's like when you're speaking for the first time, when you're doing dawah, when you're doing the stuff that, although the conditions are the same, it just feels so different because it feels like the rules have changed. And if you can bring the rules back into where they need to be, you can actually be very comfortable at 1,000 feet up or meters up.
Yeah. What you just did there is basically what philosophers do, except you did it in your bedroom, right? It's like a thought experiment. Yeah, you just actually think, okay, what if things were different? You're not physically doing an experiment; you're just doing a conceptual sort of experiment. And that's one of the things which I found powerful about your training is, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between you doing it with 5 people or 10 people or this type of thing? And I'm not saying it's a one-off form, a one-off, transformation. It does take time, but that is essentially it. That a lot of these things are actually purely in your mind. They don't actually exist in reality. Like I remember one of the things that we were thinking about once was negative words, right? So can't, shouldn't, difficult. And then you said, look, if I split open your brain, Subboor, can I find that word?
Yeah. I used to do it in a very annoying way. Yeah, but yeah, I remember it. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? That words have a massive impact on us. That and one of the biggest problems that you'll find with du'at and public speaking, all this kind of stuff, is the negative self-talk, right? It's like you are talking negatively to yourself consistently. What kind of impact is that going to have, right?
Yeah.
And the truth is, you can actually choose your thoughts. You can choose your thoughts, but it takes practice, right? Like you can actually choose to have empowering or disempowering thoughts. And I think that the whole thing around, we were talking about state change and all this kind of stuff, it's about doing the stuff in your thinking that will actually benefit you, benefit your akhirah, benefit the people around you. And that's why, in a way, we've got to get much better at our thinking. And if you think better, your tongue will be better, your action will be better, everything there will be better as well, you know?
Okay, so I want to play devil's advocate here because some of our more pious audience sometimes says things like, Akhi, if you just have ikhlas, that's all that matters. You know, you don't need to do these sort of courses. It's just, do the dua of Musa al-Islam, you'll be fine. And, this personal development, this came from kuffar anyway, Tony Robbins, these type of people. Like, how would you respond to that?
The way I respond is basically very simple. It's like, how much do you care about the people you're giving dawah to? Right? How much do you care about the people you're giving dawah to? Because if you just want to look good and you just want to kind of like, just give dawah, you don't need no course, you don't need no development, just like do basic stuff and you'll be fine. But if you are actually giving dawah to your mum, right, or to someone you really, really care about, your father, your family, your friend, someone you love and you care about, like how deep would you go in trying to learn how best to guide them to Allah? Right? Yeah. And the truth is, if you're sincere, you would go very deep. If that requires, reading a book on this and going through this and this and this, you would do whatever it takes, right? And I think that there is so much more to the da'wah than just the way we see it in a very superficial level. Of course, the Quran is the heart of da'wah. Of course, Allah is the one that guides and stuff. But at the same time, Allah has written ihsan for every single thing, right? So we should be aiming the highest. Like our da'wah, our communication should be the next level. I remember like in the course, I always talk about people saying that, I feel like our Muslim speakers are not even 50% of where they should be.
This is absolutely true. And I'll just give you a small example that Hamza gave, and I've seen it myself, yeah? Watch Nigerian pastors or someone really, really eloquent, yeah? They're like, you must love Jesus, Jesus, they're like talking like this. I went to Nigeria. I'll tell you something really funny. Yeah? I went to Nigeria. And as people, they're very different to other African nations. Each African nation has its own unique culture, right? So I went there and I started to notice that basically this audience, they don't like you just giving a talk in a very boring way. You have to be very animated and talk in a particular way, yeah? And honestly, if I didn't know some of the stuff, like from watching these Christian pastors and how they actually talk, yeah, they wouldn't have cared. Like they wanted to, like even the local brother who took me there, yeah, he's a Nigerian imam from Halsden, yeah? He said, it's not just about the way you talk, it's about the way you move. This is their culture, yeah?
Yeah.
So when I look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't just say, to any of the Sahaba, you get up and you defend me, or you get up and you speak to that tribe. He looked for people who were eloquent. He looked for people with a particular status, and he looked for people that were actually good looking. And this is something which we cannot deny, that the Prophet ﷺ, and even Allah sends beautiful people, right? So when it comes down to silly arguments like, oh, you just have ikhlas, and well, we can apply that to cars. We can say, well, we don't just say Bismillah and get on a donkey. Why do you need a Lamborghini? Why do you need a fast car? Yeah. So just for the fact that in contemporary times, the people who've done the most amount of work in terms of personal development happen to be non-Muslims. That does not mean we throw out the baby with the bathwater, because the science of rhetoric, right, which is a subset of the personal development of public speaking, this was done in the traditional madrasa system. It was lost. So it's like saying, well, the kuffar are doing biology, so the Muslims shouldn't do it. No, Muslims should be like trying to compete.
I mean, any Muslim that's been into personal development, what they always say to me, and what you'll always find, is that this is what's in Islam. Like everything here that we're finding is the stuff that Islam teaches us, you know, from basic things, from waking up early to influence, like everything out there, alhamdulillah, like is within Islam. But I think that with a lot of these things, the non-Muslims have become very good at categorizing this stuff, and they've become very, very good at selling it, right? And so what that does is it takes it to a whole nother level. Now, you imagine these guys who have been so successful, who do not have the guidance of Allah. Imagine if those guys had the guidance of Allah, right? So it's like really insane to kind of think about it. But I think that the du'at, the speakers, all these guys, they need to raise their levels to another level, because it's like when we're sitting down, you know, we're always saying like, what's the objective of a public speaker? That's what we go through the course, right? And everyone's like, yeah, it's to give a message, it's to share Islam, it's to do this, it's to do... And we're like, no, my opinion is not that. It's like, if you give a talk to 1,000 people, like an amazing talk where they love it and they think you're amazing and they're in love with you and they think you're the world's best speaker, and after the talk they don't change their life even one bit, then like, how good was that speech? Yeah. Right? So fundamentally, communication and dawah, it all comes down to, for me, that big I word, influence, right? It's all about influence. And so once you start to realize what influence is, why it's so important, why the Prophet ﷺ was the first man in that list of all time people of humanity to be the most influential, then you start seeing dawah in a very, very different way, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And the example which is relevant to the speaker, to the people watching now, is, I've said this previously, even though some people don't like it, but I've said the best science writer I've ever come across in my life is Richard Dawkins. Now, some people don't like it because they don't like him. But you have to understand that when he wrote that book in the 1970s, he made evolutionary biology popular through his metaphors, through his similes, through his stories, through his stickiness, through his emotive language, through his passion. And other biologists got left behind. And we even have a lot of people in the biological community who are actually, frankly, jealous of him. So rather than complain about his eloquence, shouldn't we be like, okay, I'm going to try and be more eloquent than that. I'm going to try and work even harder. Now, just right now, Pondering Soul has joined us. So he's one of the brothers who does live sessions with me usually, and he's very interested in public speaking. So welcome, Yusuf, and hopefully you're going to be enjoying what we're doing today. So Mohammed, what I want to get you started off on is when it comes to taking action, not just action or public speaking, but anything in your day-to-day life, right? Any action you want to do, or you find it difficult to do, you're trying to find the motivation, which we all have a problem with. The concept of state change amongst many of your teachings, I found to be the most profound, probably the most profound. So could you give us an introduction into this, the historical development of this idea in terms of contemporary times, and how it is still something which is very relevant in terms of our daily lives?
Yeah, sure. So states and state changes and stuff is all about the way you are being in that moment. Okay. So let's take an example of you giving dawah to someone, right? When you are giving dawah to someone, if you've had a very, very rough night, you've had a very rough morning, you've had arguments, you've had issues, you've had problems, you've got things on your mind, and you're in this kind of state, right? And you're giving dawah to someone, I believe that your dawah will be very, very different to if you've had a very good night's sleep, if your thinking is all about this and this and this, right? So there are states that you're in that you probably know about, which are optimum states and times when you feel confident, when you feel happy, when you feel like you want to give for the sake of Allah and you want to do stuff, right? And then there's other times when you're like feeling lazy and you feel conflicted and you feel like you don't want to do anything and you feel like you just want to pack it in and all this stuff, right? And so what state change is all about is how do we take those optimum moments and replace the times when you're in negative moments with the optimum ones, right? So it's all about creating those kind of moments which you can just switch on when needed to then go out and, like you said, take the action, have the motivation, and do the things that you want to do, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And just as a sort of something I'm just curious about, perhaps, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but if I'm right now, I'm working and I'm doing something and I'm busy and it's Salah time, your motivation for Salah is not that strong. If we were to contrast it with an example that you hear the azan and then after some time you need to pray. So I'm even starting to think that perhaps Allah in His wisdom, things like azan are actually a form of state change just before you take an action. I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. I 100% I agree with that. I think that, the way we are as human beings, we're very, very sensitive, right? We're sensitive in our ears, in our eyes, in our thinking. And these are the things that what happens is the things around you, your environment will have an impact on you, right? And so things like the adhan, things like doing your wudu, like even though you have wudu, you kind of renew your wudu, praying your sunnahs, doing your adhkar, all this stuff will help you to kind of change your state. And one of the things we do with a lot of the things, like I talked about Sister Fatima Barakatullah before, she had to go on Channel 4 to do the niqab debate, right? So that's like national TV, and you're like defending the most difficult topic out there of the time with the niqab, right? And so what we did is that I was tasked with basically preparing her for all of that. And one of the things we did is we started to create rituals that would get her into a state, right? So the way you want to think about this is think about a kind of state that would be your optimum state. So a lot of the times, one of the states that I built into myself is that when I'm public speaking or when I'm doing any sort of public thing, I want to be confident, I want to be connected to Allah, and I want to be passionate about what I'm speaking about, right? So confident, connected to Allah, and passionate, okay? So what you want to do is you want to start to think about the things that will help you to get into that state, right? And then really set those rituals up and then practice them. So, Sis Fatima, before she did that, I was like, tell me the things you would like to do before the interview that will make you feel the state that you want. So maybe she wanted to feel calm, she wanted to feel confident, she wanted to feel like a servant of Allah, whatever it was. I'm like, tell me the things that will basically make you feel that way. Write them down, let's make a list, and then start to practice them. And so then when she went there, after I spoke to her after the interview, she was like, yeah, I took all that stuff, I did it, I did the ritual, and alhamdulillah, like it made it a lot more easier and made me in a better place to do what was to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would think of, obviously, her performance at the debate was very good, but contrast that with if she was just like, I'm nervous, I'm not saying she did, but if she just was like, okay, how do I, but if she just goes in with, okay, I mean, at the end of the day, everything's decreed by Allah, amantu billahi wa rasuli, certain words we say to ourselves, certain postures that we actually have, these things have a huge impact.
Yeah, one thing, Subboor, I did with her actually is that we did all the kind of normal preparation I would do with someone, getting sound bites ready, focusing on the core argument, getting bridges ready, all this kind of stuff, right? But one of the things I told her, which was very important, especially in a debate like that, is I said to her, run your own race. Okay, run your own race. What I mean by that is that a lot of the time people are like trying to respond to what the other person's saying. Okay, so someone says something and you're like, oh my God, they said that. Okay, then you try and do this and you try and do that. And I said, think about yourself less of that kind of debater and more of someone who's like Usain Bolt, right? So Usain Bolt, when he's in his lane and he's running his race, have you ever seen him go like that? Like during the start of the race, he's like looking at it. He's like focused on one thing, and that's getting to the end. Right. And so like it's the same with people going out and doing dawah and all this kind of stuff, that be very confident in your own ability and be clear on the objective you want to get to, be clear on your race, and just run your own race. Don't get here and there, because it's very easy to get distracted and go off. And people who are very good at doing this, politicians. Politicians are trained specifically to do this. Like, you thought my training was bad. Politicians, they get sat down, and that's why when Jeremy Paxman says to them 15 times, but tell me, why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? They'll just say the same words that they say, right? They just run their race. And I think that this is really, really kind of important for the dua to get like that, get comfortable, get confident, and run their own race.
Absolutely, and it's a very Quranic paradigm. If you look at the story of Musa alayhi salam, he goes and meets Pharaoh. Musa comes with the message of Tawheed, with the message of the oneness of Allah, the greatness of Allah, and every single time, Fir'aun throws a curveball. So he either says, who Lord of the worlds, Marabul Alameen, or he may say, didn't you kill a man? Or, this man is bewitched. And every single time, the answer Musa alayhi salam gives is, the Lord of you and your forefathers, the Lord of the East and the West, the Lord, again and again and again and again, he goes back to Allah. And that particular dialogue, when I read it, it is literally what you're saying. It's just, okay, here's my goal. Whatever the other person wants to say, I will reverse engineer it and bring it back to the core point, which is the worship of Allah. And in most of our dawah conversations, we sort of become reactionary. So somebody throws this out, somebody throws that out, somebody throws this out. But you just literally have to be like laser focused and just maintain that sort of line.
Yeah, definitely. It's called bridging, by the way. It's called bridging, where you basically connect a bridge from what they're saying to where you want to go. You connect the bridge, basically. That's why it's called bridging.
Yeah. Let's get back to state change, right? So what is the benefits of having state change for public speakers?
So the benefit is peak performance. Okay, peak performance. And again, this always, it goes back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, that if you look at some of the situations which he entered in terms of difficulty, in terms of pain, all these kind of things, and then you look at his reaction, it's like, for me, it's like insane. And I mean that in a very, like, I can't fathom how can a human being react like this, right? But the reason why the Prophet ﷺ, of course, he was the best of all people and everything, but at the same time, it's about the way that you control your state. Because if you can learn how to be in a certain state and you can learn how to get into that state, then anytime something hits you, if you can jump into that state, then what you'll find is your performance is optimum. So that comes when giving dawah, that comes when taking action, that comes when helping someone. So it's all about really like getting clear on the kind of states that I want to be, because the states will be different. If you're giving a khutbah, your state will be very different to if you're speaking to your daughter, right? You want to have different kind of states that you want to kind of jump to. And so for anyone watching who wants to kind of think about developing their states, they should think about maybe 2 or 3 things. Like I said, for me, when I'm speaking, I like to be confident, I like to be connected to Allah, and I like to be passionate about the subject. So it can be as simple as getting 3 or 4 or 5 emotions that you feel you really want to get into, and then trying to switch that on. Now, there is something called anchoring, okay? Anchoring is a little bit like, if I was to like take a perfume and smell a perfume. When I smell Jupe, I'll give you an example, right? So there's this perfume, one of my favorites, it's called Jupe. When I smell Jupe, this is what I'm transformed to, yeah? I think back and I'm at my like dressing table in Pakistan, in Rawalpindi, at age 15, and I'm spraying it before I go to school with my blazer, okay? So just that smell, it transforms my state from being here in London right now to being 20 years behind.
Yep.
Right? And so we're saying that that is an anchor. That smell, it pulls you into that state. And so as human beings, we can create certain anchors that will take us into certain states. And this is what I'm saying about rituals. Like, I'll give you an example. Sheikh Abdurrahim Green, right? So I interviewed him last week. One of the things I always talk about Abdurrahim, that when he does his start, in Alhamdulillah, Nahmaduhu, and Nasta'inu, he's like holding the podium, and you can see his eyes are closed the way he closed, right? And he just gets into that state to the point where by the time he's finished the start of the khutbah, like he is just ready to go, right? And it's interesting because when I spoke to him last week and I did that interview, he was saying to me that I was so terrified when I would go to Speaker's Corner. Like, when I used to go, I was just so terrified, and it would affect me so much. But I would just get up there and I would start in Alhamdulillah. And when I would start, by the time I started the khutbah, then that's it. I would just be done. And these are the kind of states we want to be in when we're delivering this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen that in action myself, Abdurrahim, do that. And also that sometimes we overthink how easy it is, how difficult it is to actually change your state. So, for example, you mentioned about, okay, you're thinking about certain, it may be a perfume which re-triggers it. It may be a belief you have, you just try and remind yourself. But it could literally be you trying to imagine another time that you were feeling a certain emotion. And when you imagine that, your brain can't tell the difference between the fact that you're remembering that or whether you're in that state. Yeah. Which is why when you start thinking of something that scares you, you physically start getting scared. Or when you think about a time that you are happy, you actually become happy. And it is an instant thing. It's not like, it's going to take you a long time. It's going to be like trying to switch on a engine on a cold day. It is literally instantly. You could just think of something, feel it, and then automatically your entire posture changes.
And this is where the whole power of questions comes in, right? Like, if I ask you a question, Subboor, and you like try and think about this question and like try and answer it as genuinely as you can, like when you finally had your first child, like Allah gave you the child, like how did you feel?
Yeah.
How did you feel? Tell us.
That's it. The smile.
The smile.
I mean, look. Like I smile when I think about it, because children are just automatically, it just makes you happy. But it's just like that feeling, like it's so hard to describe. But it's like a bit of happiness, a bit of like disbelief, where you're like trying to pinch yourself, like, did this really happen? So yeah, it's just all these different positive emotions.
Okay, so the people that are watching, they can see I asked him one question and he's just gone into a certain state, right? And so when we're giving dawah, if we can ask the right question, the power of questions is amazing, because if you can ask them the right question, you can get that person into any state you want them to be. Right?
Let's put Arshad in a state. Nottingham Retreat 2010, Ayura.
Oh, is that the robe?
Remember the fight that we all had?
Is that the robe or the fight?
No, not the robe. The robe was 2012.
The Nottingham one. Oh, God.
The Nottingham Retreat with me, you, Steve, Abdurrahim, Hamza.
That could have been one of those points where Ayura just broke and it just never happened.
Oh yeah, but do you remember there was a time that we were all at each other's throats, and then there was a time that we all started connecting with each other. We forgave each other. Everyone
told their stories, and it was like, my God, like, subhanAllah, everyone has amazing stories to get into Ayura. Like, it's insane.
Amazing. And also, one other thing I wanted to just add, one of the benefits of personal development is it helps you be that person who the Prophet ﷺ said about, that here's a man of Jannah. And when the Sahaba went and they found out, then it was a man who did not have any malice in his heart before he slept. And I honestly think to myself, if I didn't learn certain things from personal development, I wouldn't have recognized how to do that. Because it's very easy when you hear a narration of the Prophet ﷺ about this man who got rid of everything bad in his heart. But then when you try to do that, it's very difficult. But when you emotionally convince yourself, okay, as a Muslim, at the end of the day, we are all here to forgive each other, whatever mistakes happened in the past, X, Y, Z. And then you because the thing is, there's one thing where you rationally are convinced what a good thing to do is, but then there's one emotionally, when you're emotionally convinced, and this is related to obviously the narration of the Prophet ﷺ, where the young man wanted to commit zina, and rationally he knew zina was wrong, but the Prophet ﷺ invoked the emotion of disgust by saying, would you like someone to do that to your sister or your mother or your daughter? So it is such a powerful thing where you just said that, simple question, they can change your state, and that can actually change the quality of a Muslim that you actually are.
Yeah, I think also, bro, a lot of this is about vision. It's about your vision, right? Because I believe that, there is your fitrah, right? And then there's that nafs, right? Like there's your soul and there's your body. And the body, it desires things and it lusts after things. And then there's that soul that is nourished by Allah, nourished by the guidance of Allah, right? And what happens is that I think one of the most important topics in the whole of personal development is identity, because identity is so powerful. Like once your brain or your mind, it chooses an identity for you, it's very easy for you to be congruent with that identity. If the identity is something different, it's easy for you to do something different, right? And so for that reason, I think like getting very clear on what you want your identity to be, and literally it can be you carving out your identity and saying, like someone would say, I'm not a maths person. I'm not a maths person. It could be you rewriting it and saying, I'm a maths genius, right? To the point where we can actually alter our characters. We can alter who we were. Like the person you see today, if you were sitting with me 20 years ago, you would never want to see me on a live stream, right? You just would never, you would hate to see me on a live stream. So the people that you want to, like the person you want to become, this is something that you need to have like a real vision for. You need to decide who you want this to be. You should connect that vision to Allah, connect it to the pleasure of Allah, connect it to the Prophet ﷺ, and really come up with who you actually want to become. And with your right thinking, with the consistent action, you'll become that person, inshallah.
Absolutely. And it's about incremental steps as well. Because when we did the public speaker training with you, I mean, later on when we brought you on to do it for the advanced du'at from around the world, that was just like 4 hours where you were trying to do a crash course. But when it was consistently, where every week, for example, we used to do the one-to-one sessions where I watched a TED talk and then I gave it to you. And then one week I tried to sneak in a philosophy crap and you were like, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it, Subboor. I don't want to hear that. And then I had to, stick to TED talk. So, stuff like this, because I'm honestly thinking to myself, that I get it with the whole state change thing and the personal development thing, but until and unless you constantly apply it, you will forget it and you will become rusty. So it's a lifestyle. It's not just something I've learned, so let me switch it on randomly. You've got to practice it every day.
Yeah, I mean, consistency is definitely the key, bro. Like this is why, the deeds loved most by Allah, those that are done consistently, because any action that you do consistently, even like a short period of time, like you'll see a massive benefit from it. And our life, alhamdulillah, as Muslims is geared up for consistency. Yeah, like sometimes, like me personally, I'm not really one of those people that really loves waking up at 4 a.m. and like, praying for you. I'm not that guy. I'm that guy who loves sleeping and stuff, right? But at the same time, I'm so grateful that Allah prescribed 5 prayers for us, because I think that our lives would be total disasters without salah, right? And if you take salah as something, because there's this thing where what you can do is, one of the best ways to build habits, by the way, is like hooking on to existing habits. Okay, so like that the 30 seconds, my first ever khutbah, the 30, oh my god. Yeah,
oh my god,
right? The first, I'm not telling that story publicly, by the way, but the first ever khutbah that I did, I talked about how every single night you charge your phone. Okay, every single night you charge your phone next to your bed. And what I did personally is I took my.
I'm gonna have to interrupt him here, because the story he's gonna give is the fun part, but I want the cocaine part, right? The part which is like that was really crazy, yeah. So what happened was, no, listen. Before he tells this story, here's what happened, yeah. So we were all waiting for the khatib. The khatib wasn't there, and we said, okay, does anyone know how to do a khutbah? This brother
that's the dumbest question asked in the history of our era.
So somebody at the back, he said, yeah, sure, I'll do the khutbah. So he stood up and he started talking, yeah? Everybody was sitting down, including Arshad, by the way. He was just sitting with his head down, right? And everybody was listening to the khutbah. And as the brother was talking, he was talking about Palestine and then KFC.
Do you know how he started? I'll tell you exactly the way he started. I remember it to this day, yeah? The brother stood up, the other brother did the adhan, right? And he said the first words, he said, "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." And then he started talking about the fried chicken of Palestine.
Bro, all I remember is I was sitting there, I turned around and I looked and nobody was noticing anything. Literally nobody. Literally. I think everybody was like, what's going on? But I don't want the khutbah to be over. So you're not allowed to talk during the khutbah, but technically, I think regardless of whichever madhab you follow, I think there was an exception to be made here. So I said to Arshad, can you please come out for a second here? And I said to him, Arshad, this guy's not well. Can you please do the khutbah? And then we walked back in. He had literally a few seconds to just change his state.
No, hold on, one second, yeah? So when Subboor came out to me, I was like, yes, like Subboor is going to step up now and he's going to say, Arshad, go and stop him and I will do the khutbah, right? But this loser here, he goes, you're going to do the khutbah. And at that time, I had never, ever done a khutbah before, right? But I was confused at what to do. Now, anyway, imagine that you're going to stop someone who is basically doing a khutbah and they don't know what they're talking about and they don't even know, you don't even know if they're Muslim or what, right? They're doing a khutbah. Like, how would you stop that, brother? Think about it. Like, brothers and sisters are watching this. How would you stop? You'd probably go over to them and say, Jazakallah khair, brother. Thank you so much. All this, like, that's how normal human beings would react. This guy, Subboor Ahmed, goes up to him and he stands in front of him and he goes, I have to put a stop to this. I have to put a stop to this. Like, what on earth, right? And he's like, no, we can't do this, this and that. And the poor guy who's giving the khutbah goes to me, he looks at me and he goes, did I do okay, brother? And I said, yes, brother, thank you so much. Right? And then he sat down, but subhanAllah, what a day, man.
Oh my God, that was so bad, bro. That was so bad.
That was a lesson for us who failed to step up on that day when we should have stepped up.
Definitely. And it kind of reminds me of the bystander effect. That something really horrific happens. It's like, why won't anyone do anything? And everyone's like, why won't anyone do anything? But it's literally just takes somebody to get, whoa, what's going on? We have to take action here. So I want to ask you this. When you gave that khutbah and you had to change your state from a state of, I want to pray Jummah, to a state of, I think this guy's insane, to, I got to do the khutbah. Like, how did you mentally prepare?
I think what I do, this is a technique that I teach people and I'd advise everyone to do it. It's called the selfish switch. The selfish switch, okay? And the way the selfish switch works is that a lot of the time when people are doing public speaking, the reason why they have issues is because they are being selfish, okay? What do I mean by that? I mean this. If I sit here now and I start to think and comprehend about, oh my God, look, I've got white hair. Oh my God, my belly's so big. Oh my God, look at this thing on my nose that no one knows, like, where is this from? And if I start focusing on that and I be selfish to think about only myself, there's no way that I can add true value. And there's no way I can care about you and give my audience value. Okay. So what needs to happen is that you need to switch it. You need to switch it from focusing on yourself and focusing and worrying about what people will think and focusing onto the audience, right? So whenever I speak, like now, alhamdulillah, I feel a lot less nervous than I used to. But like if I'm coming onto the show, all I'm thinking about is the people that are here who are watching. How can I add value to their lives? How am I going to bring them closer to Allah? How am I going to help them, right? And this is exactly what's happened with this thing here, that when the khutbah actually happened, I was like, okay, look, something's gone massively wrong here. And now I need to rectify this. What can I do to possibly rectify this? The best thing I can do is actually help people and give them, real kind of value in the Jummah. And that's all that my thoughts went to,
And I really like the term selfish switch. It kind of reminds me of Imam Ghazali, when Imam Ghazali said that if someone's house is on fire, and somebody is trying to shout and ask the occupants to escape the house, imagine if that person tried to beautify his voice or was concerned about how they sound rather than making the most effective sound to get the people out of the house. He said that's the difference between somebody who is selfish and thinking about their own image while calling to Allah, and somebody who is purely selfless and their entire focus is somebody else. Because when their entire focus is somebody else, they'll just be like, fire, come here, get out of there. When it's like, you're trying to be eloquent, and all this type of stuff. And that is really powerful. That is really powerful that when you think about it. If you come onto this live stream and you're thinking, man, I'm tired, I've got so many other things to do. When you start thinking maybe one person watching this, I could affect their life, then it's a total different ballgame. And I like that selfish switch.
And the selfish switch, one of the other things I do in the training program is that I tell people, like, imagine that there was a car crash right now, like in front of you. May Allah protect us. There's a car crash, and a guy sitting in the car gets flung out the window to the other end, and he's like bleeding and he's in serious trouble. Okay. Now you go over to the guy to help him, right? Do you think that guy will go, oh no, you're bearded, I don't want you calling the ambulance, you're too fat, you're too thin, you're too short, don't call the ambulance, let me die here, please let me die here? Come on, man, no one will ever do that, right? Even if it's an EDL supporter, you know, they won't say, oh yeah, you're a bearded Muslim, please don't call the police, don't call the ambulance. They'll be begging for you to do it, right? And if you're there thinking about the size of your beard or your belly or your eyes or your brain or something like that, and that person's dying, like, what does that say about you? Right. And so we need to really, like, that's what I'm saying, that we need to shift our focus from the pettiness of ourselves to the greatness of what we can achieve with others, inshallah.
Subhanallah. And, you know, it kind of reminds me of what Muhammad al-Sharif once said, that, you know, stop showing off. But if you want to show off to Allah. You know, make it so Allah is the one that you're really focusing on. Now, we've had some questions. There's a question asked by Muqeet Khan, which is how do we overcome our inferiority complex? I'm summarizing his question here. You know, Muslims, we have these complexes like, oh, they're not going to listen to me, I have a beard, or, you know, oh, these people, like the Western world, they're so sophisticated, we're so backwards. Is this person even going to listen to me? Like, how do we overcome that?
Okay, it's a good question. I think that what you need to realize is that you have two things over anyone, right? And these are the only two things that you need. The first thing, the only thing you need is Allah to be with you. And the second thing is the truth, right? Allah to be with you and the truth. So like this whole thing around like inferiority complex, all this kind of stuff, a lot of it again is negative self-talk. It's all the kind of stuff that's happening here. It's all the fear and everything to do with that. But fundamentally, what we need to realize is that if Allah is truly with us, we don't need anything, right? And how? But then the question comes, how is Allah with us? Because we don't want to be like Bani Israel, right? We don't want to be like, oh yeah, Allah's just with us. That's it. Sorry, like I could do whatever I want. I could kill people. I could be horrible. Allah's just with us. We don't want to be like that, right? We actually want to be people who Allah is truly with. And so how is Allah with us? Allah is with you based on one thing, only one thing. And it all comes down to this one thing, which is choice, right? The choices that you make will basically define whether Allah is with you or not. Because ultimately, Allah says He created death and life to test which is best of us, right? Now, how are we going to decide who's the best of us? Because of the deeds we do. How do we decide on the deeds that we do? Well, the deeds all come down to the decisions that you make, the choices that you make, right? So fundamentally, like I might have the view now that this hand, I am going to open the hand. Like Allah give me a choice. Do I keep it closed or do I open it? In my mind, I might make the choice that I want to open it now. I might not be able to open it because Allah might not give me the power, but I have the choice of whether I want to open it or not. And that choice, that's the only thing that Allah is going to hold you accountable for, right? So then when you get to this realm that all I need is the truth and I need Allah on my side. So we know, alhamdulillah, Islam is the truth. How do I get Allah on my side? The way you get Allah on your side is very simple. Just do the right thing, right? Like ultimately, fundamentally, if you're trying to do the right thing with the right intention and you have the truth, then Allah will be on your side. That's it. It's as simple. And then when you know Allah is on your side, like how can you have a complex of any thought? And you need to replace that thinking with the thinking of I'm not good enough, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I've got green eyes and all that stuff.
Definitely. And it's again about, that is a type of state change when you start thinking, well, it's about Allah. You know, one of the things which I sometimes, I try and get advice from Abdul Rahim Green about intention. And he says, well, it's not about you, it's about Allah. And he says something so simple, yeah? Like, wow, yeah, it is really about Allah. Because if you don't do something for Allah, fundamentally, it's just gone, you know?
Yeah. I think the people... Also, Subboor, one thing people need to know, right, is everyone has doubts. Like, if you sit with the big shuyukh, they will have doubts about their own speaking, their own abilities, this, that. Like, everyone's a human being. Like, I have 1,000,001 doubts, right? All I'm saying is that when you get clear on your objective, that I am on this live stream to add value to someone, to get them closer to Allah, even if it's one person that by that much they get closer to Allah, that's it, I'm happy, then that's fine. And then it's just like go there and give it your all, no matter what, right? So it's about getting clear on the objective, giving it your all, making sure that Allah's at the heart of it. Because the point is that if Allah's not at the heart of it, then you're going to lose. Like, you could look good, everyone can think you're amazing, but if Allah's not at the heart of it, ultimately you lose.
No, absolutely. That's the very foundation of everything. And it makes things easier because, you may absolutely hate the person next to you, right? If you have to work with them for the sake of Allah, then you do it. There's a brother, I'm not going to mention who it is, but as part of the IRA training, we have interviews. We have to go and interview international du'at and ask them difficult questions. And we usually ask the question as part of our process, which Mohammad is probably very surprised to hear, because we used to not listen to him when he wanted us to follow processes, was, well, could you work with somebody that you don't like, right? And a lot of people are like, well, how do I do that? And this particular brother, he said, yeah, well, in life, you don't like most of the people you work with. It's just, when you're working with a greater goal, people are different. Their personality is different. Their temperament's different. So you just have to learn to basically get along. Now, somebody's asked a question here, which I think it's about a job interview, but I'm guessing this will help with everything. So it's like, how do I change my state so I'm well prepared for the job interview?
Okay, very good. So one of the things you need to know is that obviously people want to be confident in job interviews, right? Confidence is one of those things where there's a lot of confusion about it. Okay, so imagine this person who's asked this question. Imagine you being in your bedroom. Okay, so you're sitting in your bedroom. How confident are you that you know the way from your bedroom to your bathroom? How confident do you think that person is? Like, maybe they say I'm 100% confident at getting to my bathroom, right? Why? Because you've done it so many times before. You're so clear on what it is, how to do it. So confidence is based on competence. Okay, like the more competent you are at something, the more confident that you're going to be. And so, for example, if I'd never done a live stream, if I'd never spoken in public or never done anything like that, and I came on here, my level of confidence will be different to what it is now. So when it comes to jobs and all these kind of things, the key for it is competence. And obviously competence can come from learning, and it can come from experience. It can come from other people's experience. So what I would do is, if I was going to a field, I've got this video ready. Have I released it? Yeah, I think I released it recently. It's called How to Get Your Dream Job Even When You Know Nothing About It. Right. So if you go to muslimceo.com, which is another program that I run, and check out the video called How to Get Your Dream Job Even If You Know Nothing About It, in there, I basically talk about how you can actually learn about things. So I'll give you an example. Let's take a really random example. Glasses, okay? As in the glasses that you drink. So imagine that I'm really interested in this field and I want to get a job in glasses. Now, how many people do you think there are in the world that have ever read one book about glasses, these kind of glasses? Probably very few. Okay, very few people have ever read a book about glasses. So if you go and read one book on glasses, I guarantee you will probably have more knowledge than 90% of human beings on glasses. Okay, if you then go and read a second book on glasses, because what happens when you read two different books on one topic, you'll find that they've got ideas that they kind of borrow from each other, similar, a little bit different. If you go and read 3 books on one topic, what you'll find is that suddenly your knowledge is huge. And then if you can combine that with a little bit of experience, like actually go and do it in the field. And the top tip here is go and do it for free, because anyone will hire you for free, and get that experience, get that knowledge, and like be obsessed with learning about it and doing it. Then inshallah, you get to this level where you're actually competent, right? And then when you're competent, then your confidence for a job interview is very high. But at the same time, if you can be authentic, like really authentic, the authenticity will be more important to people than anything else, because ultimately people want to work with people who they can trust, who they know that will be honest and sincere with them and all that. So the natural characteristics you have as a Muslim, that should be showing through as well. But like I said, get the competence up, learn as much as you can about the kind of role that you're going for, the job, try and speak to people that have done the job. All those kind of things will really help you to get your competence up. And these are ways to hack it. Right? Obviously, someone might take 20 years in a field to learn how to make great glasses, but by you speaking to 3 people who have done it for 20 years, you can really learn the recipes and go forward quickly as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is definitely one of the things which um, I try and apply in my life, which is you just find a niche area. Many years ago, Muhammad Sharif used to do Niche Hero, about finding a niche and then just becoming a go-to authority for that. And I'm trying to do that with biological evolution. So I'm trying to create a situation where an atheist can't turn around and basically pull a fast one, where you have not only a little bit more knowledge than them, you actually end up giving them free education.
Yeah, but sometimes it takes a beating, right? Like you go out to a public forum, you get beaten by an atheist good, and that helps, right? And for me, like one of the moments that happened in IERA was the island trip, I think it was, right? Do you remember that one? Yeah. So I didn't go on the trip, but I saw some of the footage. And after the footage, I was kind of analyzing the professor, I can't remember what his name is. They were talking about embryology and all this stuff. And we were like looking at the kind of the way the professor was communicating, the confidence that they have, and that beating, I think it kind of pushed us to the next level. So sometimes you have to go out there, get a beating from people, and then go and take yourself up to that next level where you feel like, I want to learn more about this, I want to do it. But just make sure, guys, that when you're learning this philosophical madness, because I think it's madness, right? When you're learning this stuff, make sure that, you're always doing it for the benefit of the person you're going to speak to, right? As opposed to doing it as a thing that you're going to beat him with. Because if you're learning this knowledge, you're learning all this Darwinism stuff, which I think I'm so proud, I'm so amazed that Subboor has gone deep into this. And I love the fact that, alhamdulillah, we have people like you, bro, in the ummah that are able to do this thing. Really, even though I hate philosophy, I hate all this stuff, I'm so happy, alhamdulillah, that you're doing it and the other brothers are doing it. But ultimately, if you go out there and you learn this knowledge and you're going to go out there and use it as a stick to beat the atheists with, then I think you failed in your dawah. Because ultimately what you're doing is you're basically beating the stick for shaitan. Because what does shaitan want? Shaitan wants that atheist to never ever be close to Allah, never be guided, and never go to Jannah, right? And so if you use your knowledge and your stuff in that way to kind of beat them, you're just like shaitan. You're just like helping shaitan in that way. So I'm not saying that you can't give a good beating. Sometimes a good beating is exactly what they need, metaphorically speaking, right? But what you need to do is just make sure that your heart, is sincere in their guidance.
Absolutely. And it's so important to have self-reflection. Like, for example, when I think about the island trip, I mean, there's a lot of very good things that came out of it. One thing that I took away personally is that the other person may not have an argument, they may be very confident, and the Muslim looking less confident, even though their argument may be correct, that leads to the perception. Now, if you remember with certain debates that happened in the big debates, and if you watch the debates afterwards and we did the analysis and stuff, there was a particular question that you asked Hamza that, this professor, he said this thing, what did he mean? And when Hamza explained it to you, you're like, oh, I get it. But there and then, by the professor's confidence and this type of thing, people don't understand the arguments. They look at, the confidence, and they look at whether the other person is being put off. So, it's a lot of showboating. And the thing about personal development as well is that we do understand there are certain things that it's like a package. You can't just have the logic. You have to have the rhetoric. You have to have the body language. You have to have these things. Now, Mohammad, there's one last question, because there's quite a few others, but there's one last question. We run out of time, so I want you to answer it. The question's about how do you fight your nafs? How do you fight your desires? And I'm just going to extrapolate this a bit further, because I think every single person here faces the same issue, which is procrastination. We're just continuously procrastinating, and it's very difficult to take action and actually start moving our life towards the goals that we've actually set for ourselves. So how do we fight that inner demon?
I think, one of the things that really kind of changed my life, alhamdulillah, was that regret. For me, regret was very powerful, right? The reason I remember, I always tell this story, Ramadan time at university, I was just dossing. I was just doing nothing at university, wasting my time. Ramadan time comes. I go to the prayer hall because, they're doing iftar there. And I see this guy, and he's carrying this massive box of chicken. And I'm watching him, and he's struggling with the box, and I'm looking at everyone else walking in, and I'm like, I'm one of those guys who's going in there to eat the chicken that guy's holding, And really, at that moment, I really felt like a loser. I was like, what a loser you are. Like, there's this guy who's struggling with a chicken and you're here to eat. Like, what have you ever done for people, right? And for me, that regret, bro, it was like a horrible feeling. But at the same time, for me, like that became rocket fuel. Because what I did then is I came back the following year. I wasn't even in the university, and I started to basically help with Ramadan food because I didn't know what else to do. And that just went on this journey that I just consistently went on the journey where I joined MYH and then I helped start Al Maghrib, then I helped start Aira, and it just kind of fueled me. And I think that what you need to do is that you really need to question yourself. Like, you really need to ask yourself that, do you feel safe from the punishment of Allah? Right? Like, do you really feel safe? Even though you're praying 5 times a day, you're doing this, you're doing dawah, whatever. Like, do you feel that you have enough good deeds and that you are comfortable now to like chill? Because if you're not comfortable, if you can't chill, if you haven't like left real legacies and grown people and done great things, then how can you sit there comfortably? Like, how? There's certain hadith that I hear, bro, and they are filled with hope for certain people, and they are filled with distress for certain people, right?
Yeah.
So you know the hadith about someone will do the actions of the person of Jannah the whole time, right? And then they'll be like a handspan away from Jannah, and then suddenly the qadr will take over, and you know they'll be in Jahannam, right? Like, that should terrify any of us that pray 5 times a day or think that we're doing what Allah wants. That should terrify us, right? And so what I'm saying is that fundamentally, I kind of see it as a bit like a secret agent, that I think that I should be a secret agent for Allah, right? Ultimately, my goal in life is to move people closer to Allah, right? So I would say, get yourself a clear vision on what you want to do. And then that vision is the person you become. But then on a lower level, like, practically, what can I do? Practically, what you can do is you can actually wake up at Fajr and start work at Fajr. Every time I do work in the mornings on those hours after Fajr, it's worth almost double of any other time I work during the day, right? Simple productivity thing. But do you have the like, you know, do you have the power to make that right choice? Right? And I feel like a hypocrite because this morning after I prayed Fajr, I went straight to bed, right? Like, normally after Fajr, I will stay up and I will say, this is the most productive time in the day. So really, it's about taking these kind of techniques that are there, like praying at Fajr time, doing the hardest thing that you don't want to do. Isa was doing his homework this morning, and I said to him, which is the thing that you don't like doing the most, or is the hardest for you? He said, this one, like, I think it was handwriting practice. Something. I said, start with that one. Right? Always, like Brian Tracy said, eat that frog first, right? So what I'm saying is that ultimately, like, this is about you going deep inside yourself, right? And understanding that when you stand in front of Allah, like, what do you want to do? And you can do really practical things. Like, you can go and sit at a graveyard. Go and sit at a graveyard alone with nobody for 1 hour and think about what you want to do in your life. Right? Suddenly, like, you get a perspective that you never had before. So I would really say that you need to think deeply about what you want for your akhirah. And then after that, it's like, Muslims should be these people. Like the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you know, when he got the armor on and then they were like, oh, no, we changed our mind. Prophet ﷺ, like, let's not fight now. He's like, listen, the armor is on. It's happening now. That's it. It's finished. And this is how we need to see our actions. So you need to do your weekly planning. You need to sit down every morning. You need to organize your day. But once you get into that moment, then it's like, that's it. It's on now. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to do it and I'm going to finish it. Like, this is what we used to say in Aira, like, no excuses, just results, right? I don't want to hear you. The dog ate your homework. My mom said, do this thing instead. And like, there's none of that. There's just like, do your action and get the results and do it like you work for Allah. Like, high standards, do it in an amazing way, give it your all, do it for the sake of Allah. Bang.
Absolutely. And
sorry, was that too harsh?
No.
Someone said to me the other day, some sister, she goes, I've seen your content. You're very mild-mannered. I was like, what? Mild-mannered. Anyway.
You know what it is? This is my way of thinking about it, that, you know, some people, they don't realize how dead we are as Muslims in terms of the way that we publicly speak and the way we do certain things. So when they see someone talking who's animated, who's passionate, who's powerful, it's kind of like, is that halal? Consider that, Khalid bin Walid, he says, Bismillah, la yadurru ma ismi shay'un, he drinks the, thing. And come on, like, this is, as Muslims, we are supposed to be people who get people motivated. Now, how do you get someone motivated? You get someone motivated by, talking like, reading out of, do you remember as part of your course once you said, can you get me something really dry and philosophical? And then I gave you something and you're like, perfect. And then people had to read it. And it was like watching paint dry. It was just like, all this stuff. And we really have to understand these things, that these things have a huge impact. So we're over time by 15 minutes. We definitely want to have Mohammad Arshad on this YouTube live again. I just wanted you to give any piece of advice or anything you've been thinking about for the people today, for them to take away as a lesson.
So 3 words: you will die. You will die, right? Now, again, this is what I'm saying, that I think fundamentally, especially if you're du'at, I think that you need to spend a lot of time developing yourself. You need to spend time on yourself every single day as a person to develop not just your mind, but actually your heart. Because ultimately, if you look at the Quran, there's parts where Allah says that to the Prophet ﷺ, it's as though you will kill yourself over the grief of their disbelief. Yeah. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ being told that your sadness about their disbelief is so much, it's like you're going to kill yourself over it, right? And I wish that the du'at were like the Prophet ﷺ in that way, that they had so much grief that when they're giving dawah to someone, they're desperate for this person to kind of, accept Islam. And I think this is what I'm saying, that fundamentally get your knowledge up, get your good routines up, but more than that, get your empathy up for the person that you're giving dawah to. And if you do that, this is from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that when you think of the words, you will die, we automatically think to ourselves, well, we should think to ourselves that Allah says, whoever wants to meet me, I want to meet them. Whoever doesn't want to meet me, I don't want to meet them. So death for us is not necessarily something bad. The Prophet ﷺ said, death is a gift to a believer. But I saw a video on Facebook where one of these personal gurus, he puts down the window of his car and this woman basically asks him, can I have a selfie? He takes a selfie and then she says, can you give me something that's motivational? And then he said to her, you will die. And then she was like, but he's trying to get her motivated about life. But then I was just thinking to myself, the way you said it right now, I found quite comforting. But I don't think that woman found it comforting, because basically, like Allah says, their deeds on the day of judgment are like ash. It's not worth anything. Everything you've done in your life is absolutely meaningless. But the way that you've said it is, then we always have this thing to look forward to, that death is just the door between us and Allah. So
even if you think about the people that you miss, there's people, loved ones, family members, we miss. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that live for Allah, and that should show in your relationships with everyone, even people you're giving dawah to.
And for everybody watching, you can follow Mohammad Arshad on the link that I just posted, which is muslimceo.com, and also muslimmastery.com, which I also posted. And I've also, I think, I've put his Facebook in the description for anyone that actually wants to get some more advice from him, or just to follow his stuff. Jazakallah khair, Mohammad, and inshallah we're going to have you in the future again. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much. Wa alaikum assalam.